Don't cross the streams.
Hi, everybody in the chat room. How you doing? It's me. It's Johnny Million. We're here. Ta-da!
Hey,
Hi, hello.
hello.
Um, Russia, Russia, Russia. It's so weird that it turns out
Here
that
we are.
yeah, it turns out that everyone was actually right about this, including Mueller. Um, and then there's this Matt Gates. The
What's that Johnny Million one?
huh? Oh yes. Oh yeah. Look at that.
I
Some
have
of
come
these.
here to chew bubblegum
And the guy
and
with
kick
Johnny Million has
ass.
one post and like one
All
follower.
out of bubblegum.
Live exclusively for WCPT in Chicago, standing up and speaking out, here's Hal Sparks.
Well, welcome to Saturday, everybody. It's very exciting because I'm at home this weekend, but next week and the week after and the week after that, I will be in Florida doing the show where there is a current spike in COVID cases. Luckily,
Hey.
I myself am vaccinated, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to take extra precautions. And as a matter of fact, the lovely folks at the Southern Shakespeare Festival, where I'm doing Malvolio in 12th night, May 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. One of the evenings will be streamed. I'm not sure
I was
which.
about to ask that.
Yeah, I believe it's the 8th, but I could be wrong. I'll find out more as details.
Yeah, as that gets
Are
closer, give
yeah.
us all the
I'll
deets.
I'll give
And
you
can we
the big.
purchase a ticket for that?
I believe so, and just
For the
along with
streaming thing?
along with all the other things. That said, it's there was this big story about how like Florida and DeSantis and they're doing so much better than California, and they did such a great job, staying open and being open and all this kind of stuff. And then compared to California, where of course they oddly have a $65 billion budget surplus this year, and compared to other states with equal population, their death rates were pretty darn low, considering the vast majority. You have a fairly evenly split state as far as style of living. You do have L.A. and San Francisco as these kind of that are thought of anyways as these hubs of liberals and progressives that have control over everything, but San Diego and Irvine and areas of Orange County are very heavily, densely populated and full of right wingers and many, anti-maskers. And the east side of the state, especially as you get up in state, near Devin Nunes's district and the like, is very, pro Marjorie Taylor Greene Anglo-Saxon caucus. So the death rate, while you might say, well, California is like this, the reality is the death rate was initially a spike in the cities because that's where the virus hit before we had any vaccines, before we knew what treatments were available. And by the way, there's been new studies on both hydroxychloroquine and remdesivir, and both are showing no efficacy in stopping people who would go to the hospital or die from it at all. These were treatments that were initially thought if they give it to you, that this will stave off death and stave off long hospital stays. What's turning out is that if you're going to be one of the people that stays in the hospital and perhaps dies, neither of those things is going to help you at all. And if you're just going to stay home with the sniffles, I can't find any argument that it shortens your sniffles, that it does anything at all, except give you the illusion that you're going to be fine until you're not. So that was a new study this week, genuinely. So, but Florida, bragging openly about how well they're doing versus, say, California, New York, and the like, whatever. And then they're in the middle of another surge, another spike, and which has a lot to do with spring break revelers, people just deciding to go out fully, and largely the anti-vaxxers in the state, because there is enough vaccine at this point, and there's enough vaccine availability that people can actually count on if the majority of the people who are eligible to get vaccinated, even with just their first dose, it can slow the roll of this vaccine so much so that you can kind of go out in a restaurant that's relatively packed and not get sick and not give the virus to anybody else on a statistical level that is genuinely meaningful. One of the concerns, and what Dr. Fauci and Jim Jordan had their big blow up about this week. And I don't know if you saw that, John.
No.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's basically Jim Jordan just screaming about liberty. And oh my God, thank you, Hal Vickery, celebrating his second Moderna shot 2 days ago.
Hey.
Yay! Hal Vickery is fully vaccinated.
That's
As
Hal coming
am
in
I.
strong.
Yes, that the Hals are staying are well in the vaccine camp. That over the course of that the Jim Jordan is yelling at Fauci about in these sort of oversight hearings that they're having, that when are Americans going to get their liberties back? That liberties have been under attack, and even in terms of Dr. Fauci says Americans' First Amendment rights have been attacked. Their freedom of religion, which I don't know anybody who only believes in God when they're in church. Not really. I know some people who go to church to pretend that they believe in God for other people, but that's not the same thing, right? That's, if you only believe when you're in the building and don't believe it when you're outside the building, you're an anomaly as a human being. It's a very, very curious, or you're just oddly gullible. The minute you go in, you believe absolutely, and then as soon as you step out, you're like, oh, well, reality and gravity and physics are clearly a superior thing to follow. It's absurd.
If you're a frog and somebody shined a flashlight in your eyes.
That's right. And so, he became, very heated, and this is the one where some people have seen where, Fauci's saying you're ranting again, which is an apt description of what Jim Jordan is doing. But Jim Jordan effectively represents the anti-vaxxer, crowd. This is and the linkage between Ohio politicians and Florida politicians is well known and has been around for a long time, ever since they were the original swing states for most of our lives. If you won Ohio and you won Florida, you won the nation. That is no longer true. And it's been leaning not true since the early 2000s. And so now they're feeling that kind of pinch, and so DeSantis with the, as much as he's like, we beat California. Well, the only reason you even came close to pretending that you beat the California is because you had state officials raiding the house of a woman who was posting legit figures because she knew as a public health official that Florida was manipulating the data to look like their deaths were lower. And Florida shaved off 4,249, I believe, of the dead to make their numbers statistically better. So, and one of the things that they
How
bring
do
up,
all the families feel about that?
Yeah, yours didn't count, right?
Yeah.
This was,
or if they can bring him back to life,
I'm for it. Yeah. Well, if you could bring him back to life, Florida would be out of business because a large, as my grandmother once said, do you have any idea how hard it is to get a body out of Florida? And which is weird for your grandmother to say at the Thanksgiving table if she's not the head of a mafia family.
Right.
Right. You would think that was the most mafia thing my grandmother ever said. And the reason was is because they had a condo down there at the time that they would go and visit, but they were concerned about hanging out down there because if one of them died, Florida has all these rules about shipping a body out of the state. They want you buried down there. They make it as hard as possible so that family will come and visit you and then go to Disneyland or Disney World and Epcot Center and to the beaches and stuff. They want you to come. Hey, they died here. They should be buried here, and then you can come and it's like cemetery tourism is a part of the financial.
There you go.
Structure of Florida. So part of the question was, and I wanted to address this in the first part, was that Dr. Fauci's wearing a mask, and so is Jim Jordan. Both of them have been vaccinated, by the way, and Jim Jordan was, and Tucker Carlson and this crowd, and I think Jim Jordan was on Newsmax or Fox, and they were both complaining about the fact that, he's been vaccinated. He's the biggest, their medical expert on Fox said he was the biggest he's the biggest anti-vaxxer there is because he's had the vaccine and he still wears a mask, so he's making people believe the vaccines aren't efficacious. What he's at the point of is that we know that there are asymptomatic carriers when people have been vaccinated. While you might not get sick, you might pass it on. It's a very slim chance, but it's a possibility. And when you operate in the kinds of halls of Congress where almost everyone except Jim Jordan is essential, you are endangering our republic if you give the virus to somebody else.
Right. I've been getting a flu shot for years.
Right.
And if the flu shot doesn't stop me from getting the flu. If I get the flu, I might not even notice because it's not nearly as bad as it would have been. It might just be a tickle in my throat or a
Right.
stuffy nose one day. But I could still give somebody the flu.
That's right. And that is until there's a, like I said, that sort of that cloud of immunity around you where there's enough people that have been vaccinated.
Oh, I have that all on my own, long before I got my first shot.
That creates 6 foot distancing anyways,
That's right.
Yeah, you can't avoid it. I will say on a, in terms of it, like him wearing a mask and the like, one of the reasons why was a story that came out that in the 77 million people that are fully vaccinated in the U.S. anyways, in the study when it was conducted. So this was a few weeks ago. There's obviously more people vaccinated now. 5,800 breakthrough infections have been reported. 50 leading to I believe 74 hospitalizations. No, beg your pardon. 7% hospitalizations in that 5,800 and 74 deaths. People who have been fully vaccinated. Now, whether they were outside the 2-week window is a matter of question. That's not readily apparent in the study that I read.
Okay.
But 5,800 people have gotten sick from this. Both pass it on, and it's that's 0.0001% of the people out there that have been fully vaccinated that caught it, and a percentage of them got sick, and a very small percentage of them indeed got died from it. That said, that's the precaution you are seeing out of Dr. Anthony Fauci until such time as that cloud of immunity is wider. We're not reaching herd immunity anytime soon because of the anti-vax crowd. But we can slow this entire thing by everybody who will get vaccinated and wants to get vaccinated getting vaccinated, which thankfully is the majority of people. And we will be getting, in Nevada and California, you can, I think it's over 16. Is it in Illinois currently? I think it's 16 and up.
It's 16
yeah.
and up now.
Right. And
everything got pushed up.
Yeah. And so that until that shift happens, until there's enough people where you walk into a room of 20 people and 16 of them have been vaccinated, it lowers the chance that those 4 people that are also in there that haven't been vaccinated have it, are currently carrying it, and can distribute it drastically, versus the opposite of those numbers. 4 vaccinated people, 16 people who haven't had it. There's a very strong chance that not only somebody in there has it, but that they'll spread it to other people who haven't been vaccinated, and very possibly, in a rare situation, give it to someone who's been vaccinated, who thinks they're fine because they're the older person in their household and they've already been vaccinated. They go home, and the people who are waiting in line to get vaccinated or haven't had an opportunity to yet, or are homebound and haven't had a home care health person come over and give them the shot, bring that home to them and they die. That is the reason why Fauci's wearing a mask. And the quickest way to eliminate that for the Jim Jordans of the world, who seem too thick to grasp that everyone deserves a chance at life, and that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness starts with actually living. For all the pro-life wailing and gnashing of teeth they give, they certainly don't seem to care that much about born children.
I got mine.
Right. And right. As long as they're covered, they're fine.
Yeah, I got mine. F you.
Yep. And so there is a portion of that crowd, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Lauren Boeberts of the world, who we will be also talking about today, who aren't going to get vaccinated. And the only way to create a version of herd immunity, that cloud of immunity that I'm talking to, which is porous, unlike herd immunity, is for as many people who will get vaccinated to do it as fast as possible. And luckily, those numbers are ticking up. But that's why the mask, that's why still some social distancing. We're not out of the woods yet, but we are very, very close. And the only reason that statistically across the country that it's, that the impact is soft and we're not where we need to be is because of the big chunks of anti-vax groups that are all over this country that weigh the numbers down, that change the tide of the numbers, that when you're going to see this, when you see Michigan's got a big flare-up, you know what Michigan also has? Militia groups who aren't getting the vaccine because they think it's a big government plot to put nanobots in your body.
If you think anti-vaxxers are wearing masks right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's absurd. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. I want to thank all of our patrons for joining us today, and thank you, Hal Vickery, for your super chat. That was lovely, and I'm so glad you got vaccinated. We'll be back right after this. Well, Florida, Manitoba's closed their borders to Ottawa.
Oh, anecdotally, a friend of mine got her second Moderna shot and the following day tested positive for COVID.
Wow.
Yeah, and it hit her pretty hard.
Yeah. Was she down for the count, or was she?
Yeah, she's, and like the fever's kind of come and go. She can't smell stuff. She's got a full Monty, it sounds like. Like, it would probably be way worse if she didn't already have one shot in her.
Right. Well, that's, thanks, Milkman Norm. Sarah got vaccinated. Excellent.
What is SEK for?
Oh, Swedish kroner.
Yeah, we got some Swedish kroner from Aggie.
Thanks. I haven't, hold on, let me go to where's the YouTube board? There it is. By the way, my channel violation that I got on apparently not supporting the science of vaccines was kept by YouTube. I disputed it, and it stood. And I don't understand what I said that they could believe that I said something that was kind of in line. I mean, maybe it was because I played video by somebody else, and they're like, just playing the video of those folks is enough.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't understand sarcasm. It's very hard to say. Let's see, viewer activity. There it is. Mm-hmm.
I got me a whole pot of coffee.
Look at that. Look at that there, Sam. Okay, we'll rotate that. I hope that's a pot of coffee. Criminy. Let's see.
And I've got a thermal coffee mug that says this.
You're right. Oh, nice. That's great. I have one of my own 01 thermal coffee mugs that they make on my Twitch merch thing, and so I order samples of them to see if they're worth a damn. I've always had a problem with merch, that it just you go and buy concert merch and there's either cardboard crap merch that bands have, like the Gildian shirts or whatever the Gildian shirts that are just like. They're like sandpaper, and then they have like a big plastic thing on, and then 5 washings later they crack and fall off, Yeah. Or the kind of ones where you're like at a Velvet Revolver show and they look like vintage Urban Outfitters, and you're like, how do I get that?
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, so I named the show today Russia, because there was this constant, over the Mueller investigation, obviously stuff is starting to leak out and or come out officially, which is the beautiful part, the official channels, that not only were there a lot of areas where the Mueller team were not allowed to look because of interference from Rod Rosenstein, who at one point gave us the illusion of being the savior of the whole thing, Thank you, new patron. Yay. We all thought, well, Rod Rosenstein, at least he's there to protect the Mueller investigation. When in reality, he was there to protect the illusion of the Mueller investigation while stopping them from looking at anything meaningful, mainly Trump's financial ties to Russia. They left that completely out, which in your motive, means, and opportunity rule of trying to prove a crime eliminates the motive. And in some cases, depending on if the money was flowing directly, the means. Because in him getting elected or keeping his businesses afloat or, getting money from somewhere to pay Stormy Daniels and to pay others to keep their mouths shut, where'd that money come from? Was that directly from the Trump organization, or were they bouncing it through him from Russia as a favor? Did he only have that money because he was engaged in phony real estate deals, buying a $20 million house, selling it for $90 million, and then the dude bulldozes it, and it hasn't been, doesn't end up being worth anything now at all. Swampland, right? So over the last, the Washington Post was reporting on the connection between Paul Manafort and Konstantin Kilimnik that's been fairly well known. That was addressed in the Mueller report a few times. What wasn't addressed and what was sort of hidden from the public, both redacted in the stuff that they would allow to be released, that was, that many people knew of, and it was spoken of in terms of, news reports contemporaneously at the time, which Trump, of course, referred to as fake news repeatedly, was that he was connected to the Russian GRU, that he was connected to the Russian group that actually was trying to manipulate our elections and was also tied to other actions, what we would eventually know as like the SolarWinds hack, which I'm going to go into a little bit today because I don't know how many people know the actual details of what that is and how to kind of get a grasp of how permeate and deep that was. So the Konstantin Kilimnik thing was a story that you heard in a lot of Washington Post and New York Times stories, especially Newsweek and Time, covered it at the time because it was, it was fairly well known in the fact that that Manafort was working with the Russian-backed president of Ukraine, and this guy, who's now, by the way, escaped the country, lives under the protection of Vladimir Putin in Russia, if that gives you any indication of the man's loyalties. And we know that Manafort both worked for him. We know that Manafort is an evil scumbag who hired men on Craigslist to sexually assault his wife, who had been injured in a car accident. His daughters won't even talk to him anymore. They view him as evil incarnate. The text messages back and forth between them is some of the most vile stuff I've ever heard children say about their parent that wasn't on a Netflix documentary about someone with stalker in their nickname. So Kilimnik himself, though, was tied to Manafort, and obviously tied to some of the stuff that went on in Ukraine. Now, we know that Yushchenko is in Russia, living under the protection of Vladimir Putin. And Kilimnik, we always knew he had this tie to Manafort. What came out officially this week was that from the title of the article is "The Government Finally Connects the Line from Trump's Campaign to Russian Intelligence."
There you go.
From the first moments of the reports on the Russian interference in 2016, compiled by Mueller, it became public 2 years ago. It was obvious that it contained gaps. The report itself documented places where questions were unhappily left unanswered. We could not establish this. We could not establish that. There were a couple of places in the report. A function of reticence from relevant parties or of encrypted communications, or at times witnesses being unavailable for interview, namely White House witnesses that would not speak, or Russians that, while we still have a warrant for their arrest, a full-on Interpol warrant for their arrest, are obviously either hidden well or dead by now, quite frankly. And in that latter group was a man named Konstantin Kilimnik. Konstantin Kilimnik was indicted by Mueller's team. He sat, there we go, a 0-1 shirt. Look at that. Yay. Thanks, guys. He was indicted by Mueller's team. He sat at the center of one of the more obvious places where the campaign of then-candidate Donald Trump might have intersected with Russia's efforts to get Trump elected. He'd worked with the Trump campaign, Paul Manafort, for years before Manafort joined the campaign effort, despite, and it says, or perhaps because of his sketchy connections to Russia. One of Manafort's primary clients in the years before his volunteering to work for Trump without pay, because remember that, Manafort worked for Trump for free. The man had massive debts. Donald Trump is an alleged billionaire who's flush. It isn't just that he's got kind of a Warren Buffett kind of a wealth where he lives in the same little house and most of his money is tied up in, he's a bazillionaire, but it's, you'd have to dissolve giant companies to squeeze any cash out of them right now. And I'm just not willing to do that because I'm sitting on my investments. That kind of zone that that folks that invest like that do. No, Trump was supposedly flush with cash all the time. He was a big spender. I mean, obviously a lot of it was charity money that he was redirecting to paintings of himself, but he gave the illusion all the time that I'm running on and I'm using my own money, so I'm not beholden to anybody. But even though I'm spending my own money, I'm going to get this guy who's willing to work for me for free, who worked for the president of Ukraine who was murdering his own citizens, like right out of the Putin playbook, and have no problem with that. On August 2nd, 2016, with Manafort running the Trump campaign and Gates serving as his deputy, the three met at a cigar club in Midtown Manhattan. Beforehand, Manafort asked Gates to print out campaign polling data. This is, some of you may have heard this report, that this is an information that Manafort apparently gave Kilimnik that night. Mueller's report describes the meeting. They also discussed the status of the Trump campaign and Manafort's strategy for winning Democratic votes in Midwestern states. Months before that meeting, Manafort had caused internal polling data to be shared with Kilimnik, and sharing continued for some period of time after their August meeting. It wasn't just polling data. It was internal strategy documents. It was where they needed help. It was effectively, you know how it's illegal. Oh, we got to take another break. You know, it's illegal for campaigns to interact with super PACs, to coordinate with super PACs. Super PACs have all this money flowing through them, and campaigns, are getting direct campaign donations, and there the twain shall meet. So we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to explain something to you that Trump didn't invent the canoodling that goes on between super PACs. He just perfected it with an entire country. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. WCPT 820 is the website. You can plug that into your iPad or your phone or what have you when you're out driving in the rest of the country. Or you can go to infotainmentwars.com and watch the stream. Like and subscribe. We'll be back. Lovely. Let's see. And see if that works. And yeah. I think this worked. Boink. Ta-da. Thank you, Sean. And I missed. There was one. Who was that? Oh, Aggie. Thank you, Aggie. They're finally showing up, and my stream is delayed behind you watching it for some reason. I think it's because of the amount of info that goes out of my computer streaming.
I believe it.
Yeah. Yay. So, Hal, you should do another Florida Man song, but title it Russian Man. Russian man, please listen. You're already listening. In Russia, walls listen to you. In Russia, ears have walls. Mm-hmm. 590 people just watching on YouTube. Don't forget to give a like and a subscribe and a thumbs up and all that stuff if you haven't already. And of course, everybody over on Twitch. We got 220 people hanging out just in the Twitch room. Love you guys and your crazy emojis. It's a beautiful thing. It's there you go, yo. And then let's see. Yay! And then Facebook. Let's go over and say hi to you guys. Mary Kit Fry and Donna. Thank you guys for the stars. Appreciate that. Very lovely. Seamus. Nice. Yay. And thanks, Portia, and everybody for brooming out the psychopaths and making Facebook a relatively tolerable place. Dude, it is... how about the KKK caucus of HFR? Yeah, we'll talk about the Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene anti-bone marrow vote, and then their forming of an Anglo-Saxon caucus, as if they even know what that means. I swear to God, Paul Gosar probably gave them like some sort of low-rent Turner Diary level white supremacy argument, and they just took notes and said, we should do like a club.
I'm glad to say I don't know who that is.
Who, Paul Gosar?
Yeah.
He's a representative. He's the single most white supremacist like representative or in the entire government currently, he's the worst. Like there's some bad ones. He's the worst. He's the guy who speaks at like white supremacist gatherings. Thanks. He's for real. Why are you insulting the British like this? Free Ireland. No. I'm literally. They're insulting it. They're the ones calling it the, the Anglo-Saxon group or whatever.
This is Doris Davenport, host of The Doris Davenport Show, all local, all the time. Now let's get back to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, the Mueller report did report on, Konstantin Kilimnik and, touched on Manafort giving him information, polling data. It sounded really low end, like, yeah, guys, just checking in. Things are going awesome, that level stuff. But it was... The only thing they have the paperwork on that they, the initial ones, because Rick Gates was not on board, okay? You have to understand, Rick Gates was for a long time, he was a cooperating witness for a very long time in the Mueller investigation. So the reason we know about the polling data stuff is because Rick Gates told on Paul Manafort. Once Manafort had access to or was getting information directly from Trump or the family or on his own, people who would not later cooperate with Manafort or with the Mueller investigation, then none of that shows up. So the conduit, the initial conduit, the leak came because Rick Gates told everybody, yeah, he asked me for this polling data, and then that he gave it to this guy, and now I know that. But Rick Gates didn't know about the other stuff he passed along, so it didn't end up in the Mueller report. Effectively, that's where we are. The other person, and the name that we hear a bunch, is this guy Oleg Deripaska. He was one of the guys who was sending messages like, will this make me whole? And trying to that this known and unknown debts that Manafort had with Russians, both in the government and outside the government, and that scared him apparently. Deripaska, former client of Manafort's, whom the campaign chairman had been eager to impress with his position on the campaign, hours after the August 2nd meeting, a plane belonging to Deripaska landed in New Jersey. His team denies any link to the meeting. So, and I guess we all believe that, right? We're all cool with Paul Manafort meets with Trump, gets polling data and internal campaign information, including like voters they're going to target in the Midwest, strategy documents from the RNC, but it wasn't like here's a small folder, walk this across. This was a folder with a zip drive or with a thumb drive attached to it, and there's a lot of stuff, and that stuff goes right to Konstantin Kilimnik, but not before I guess Oleg Deripaska lands in New Jersey, pops into town that evening, and is is within driving distance of this meeting that Kilimnik has there, and that was reported on at the time. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, so this particular thing, there was this gathering. The articles at the time came out and said, okay, like Vice News put out this article, Paul Manafort, a mysterious Russian jet and a secret meeting. This is March 30th, 2018. A private jet linked to a Russian oligarch flew into the U.S. at the key time in the 2016 election. All this is Zoltan. This was all reported contemporaneously at the time, or at least fairly close to it. Thank you, Catherine. And thanks for the new subscribers, by the way. I appreciate that, guys. Yeah. We knew about a lot of this stuff, and a lot of us were, it felt like we were like pulling our hair out at the time, and we're going, there's 3 different sources reporting on this stuff. There's got to be a there, and then the Mueller report summary comes out from Bill Barr, and it's thank you, new patron. And the Mueller report comes out, and Bill Barr writes this summary and basically goes, there's no there was no evidence of collusion. Well, we now know, of course, that there was not just evidence of collusion, there was active collusion going on. Manafort, who is working for a billionaire for free, who has connections to a Russian sock puppet who was running Ukraine into the ground on purpose during the time when they entered Crimea and started to take the country back over again. That guy works for Trump for free. He gets internal campaign data, not just polls, but where they're targeting, what they think their limitations are, where they need help, essentially. That's what these documents are. All this polling data, all this stuff about, what voters they're going to target in the Midwest, all that stuff is letting the Russians know, here's where we need some help. Now, when a super PAC runs ads for, Mitch McConnell or Ted Cruz, and they have footage of these guys in it, they cannot be provided by the campaign or the person themselves. They either have to get footage from the news and pay for it, or they have to magically stumble upon it. And so if you'll recall, during the previous election cycle when Ted Cruz and Mitch McConnell were running, not in 2020, but in the cycle before for them, this weird footage started showing up online of Mitch McConnell with his wife just oddly smiling at the camera. Remember that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. And
it was really creepy.
And it was just sitting on the internet. It was just, it was just silent footage of them, like, home shots and all this kind of stuff. And the reason is because this was, to anybody that has any brains, them working around the limits on being able to present stuff to, to their super PAC. Here's some great footage to use in ads to help us win re-election. We can't give it to you directly, so we'll post it. We'll leave it unlisted. We can't leave it private because if we're caught giving you a password. But if you stumble upon it, or somebody were to show it to you because they knew it was there without any instigation from us, you could use that footage. Because we need help, and we need family man storylines, and we need, what a great, Christian conservative family values thing. We need ads about that. And you can't grab footage like that off the news, so we got to sneak it to you. So there's this footage of Ted Cruz with his arm around his brother and sitting with his family and talking with his wife and a lot of silent footage. Well, that's because you can't coordinate with a super PAC. What effectively the Trump campaign was doing was coordinating with Russia as a super PAC. And what Russia did with that information that they got was attack the electorate in all these areas. Drum up divisions, foment, fears of the other, create fake Facebook groups, create fake Facebook gatherings, BLM groups and Muslim Americans for Sharia law in Ohio.
Force weird things to trend on Twitter.
Right, and that didn't actually happen, but helped. But as an advertising strategy was so ubiquitous because of social media that it eventually it made a shift in the electorate. Then the rest of it was anti-Hillary Clinton stuff. She's got him beat on stability. She's got him beat on national security. She's got him beat on like a history of understanding policy. So we need you to chip away at those three things, not just in right-wing circles because we think we got them locked down. We need you to depress the vote of liberals and progressives around Hillary Clinton. And we need it in these 4 states. Well, in 3 of those states, they were successful. And Donald Trump won the Electoral College because of 74,000 votes in 3 states. 74,000 people. The cost of shifting the election of the United States cost the Trump campaign almost nothing because Russia paid for it in terms of, millions of rubles paid directly to Facebook that they didn't even hide. We now know that they were paid in rubles for political ads. 74,000 votes, 74,000 people. All you had to do was talk, somewhere between 60 and 80,000 people in these 3 states into not voting at all, hating Hillary Clinton, but voting down ticket for Dems across everything else if that's what they wanted, or not voting, leaving the president blank, or voting for Donald Trump because you're just so aggravated and you want to show her. And they knew that statistically that was possible in 4 states, and this would give Donald Trump the Electoral College edge. And the irony is that were the election laws that they're pushing in these countries, that they're so afraid of voter fraud and all these kind of things, were they in place, more than likely, Donald Trump never would have been elected. Because even in their attempts to go, there's voter fraud and illegals are voting and dead people are voting and underage people are voting, the reality is
Right.
when you throw your net into the water, you catch what's there, not what you want. And the problem that they've been finding in a lot of these places, including, the Mike Lindells of the world, is that, Mike Lindell
And all
has
these names are like, I'd forgotten about so many of these names.
Oh, but Frank is going to launch Monday. His social media network. It was supposed to launch Thursday, but it crapped the bed. So it's going to launch Monday at noon. He promises this time, and I can't wait for my account to go live. On Frank, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. This is for anybody who was looking for proof that there is a direct linkage of information from Donald Trump the man to his campaign chairman who was working for free, to a Russian spy who was working in cahoots with a Russian oligarch who is financially tied to Putin, and both of them speaking to Putin and the GRU, and then bringing information back through that same channel through Manafort to Trump, and affecting where they had rallies, what was said at rallies. It fomented the Q movement. It was absolutely boosted by Russian interference and the GRU and Apartment 29 and Cozy Bear and all these, the hacker groups were absolutely buoying up Ron and Jim Watkins and their seizure of the Q account from 4chan and turning it into their own, public manipulation campaign. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Are there member tags in Facebook? I don't know that if you have to turn them on. I don't know that I've turned them on because I don't know how to do that. So if you're a member on Facebook, I think it'll show up in that chat, but not in the rest. I don't know. I'm new to that part of it, guys. I apologize. It definitely works in YouTube if you're a YouTube member.
Right.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Alan. Hal got my second Fauci ouchie yesterday. Fauci ouchie. Hashtag Fauci ouchie. That's
I like
great.
that.
That's awesome. Hope you come to perform in Wisconsin when things are better. Count on it. Count on Sexy Liberal coming back there as soon as things are open. I'm going to try and talk Steph into what I would call is like the infrastructure tour, where we take Sexy Liberal to to red states that have pockets of liberals and that are could lean purple if people believed in their ability to vote, and to be part of the let's joke about how bad the roads are around here so people understand.
Right.
Yeah. Hal is just now hearing out Fauci ouchie. Yes, I am, I'm sorry.
Same here. Look here, pal.
Yeah. Come to Minneapolis. I would be glad to. Before COVID, I was making my almost yearly, visit to, pay respects to Prince, and I have not been back since they opened Paisley Park as a memorial space. So I haven't been able to. I want to go inside so bad.
Back in 20.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is one of my, it's funny, it's like, it's a Mecca trip for me, and I mean that with all due respect. Like, going to Paisley Park, to Prince's studio and his house, that's now open as a museum to him, I like...
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And the vaults, yeah.
This is Damian Perdue of Think Theory Radio, Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, we have known that Trump and his cronies were canoodling with Russians the entirety of their first campaign. We also know, because of the the information that's come out about the solar winds hack, which Biden just released a list of sanctions, and made a speech about a conversation that he had with Russia, and he spoke to Putin and he said, we're going to have a proportional response, but we're going to do something. And even the reports about the Russian bounties, the Biden IC, the intelligence community, that Biden's been talking to, have yet to. They've got moderate to low confidence on the report, so they're not acting on that. Doesn't mean it isn't true, but it means that they would need a certain level of certainty themselves, beyond what they have, to institute sanctions, financial sanctions, and controls on people who travel. And
Okay.
according to international law and other things, there'd be a certainty that you would need to do that. Again, the people who are like, it's nothing there, it was all smoke, is garbage. They just have a standard that you have to match when you get into the sanctions area. You could certainly bring it up, and he brought it up on the call. But they weighed this, several times, and like which ones would have the most importance, and what could do the most damage. And the people that they're affecting are the Deripaskas and the Konstantin Kilimniks of the world. Kilimnik is still, there's still a warrant out for his arrest. He is, he's there are gaps in the Mueller report that are directly linked to these missing folks that we will collar snatch the second they're sitting in the wrong restaurant in the wrong country with too many friendlies around them. The issue, though, is that in terms of Vladimir Putin, a good portion of those people are more useful dead. So and there's a lot of that in terms of how the Russians deal with these kind of problems. I mean, if they're willing to overtly poison someone like Alexei Navalny, and then when he comes back to the country after going to Germany for medical treatment so he doesn't die from the poison they sprayed in his face,
Right.
or on his food, when he comes back, he violated his parole by leaving the country. Even though if he hadn't left the country, he'd have died, and they were trying to kill him specifically that way. Then they put him in prison and try to make him waste away. I mean, I don't know how you trust the food provided to you by the state in that situation, and as your hands and your legs go numb, I'm going on a hunger strike, if only just because I don't know if I'm being poisoned.
Yeah.
Much less the need for attention in this situation, bringing attention to this idea. So there were the report around Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear and Apartment 29 and all these cute names for the Russian hacker farms that they use to actively attack our country and other countries around the world, because the solar winds hack that everybody was talking to didn't just affect the United States. It affected many of our allies and even some of our competitors, because they are on a competitive footing with Russia. So attacking solar winds is like attacking, and I mean, the best example is that they I guess they broke into Microsoft Office 365 at one point as well. So they were able to get into the baseline software of Microsoft Office 365. And so anybody who used Office 365, they were able to get around the security measures that you would put in to protect your files, your ledgers, your Excel documents, your internal emails. They were able to wiggle their way in there. Now, Microsoft ultimately fought that one off, changed it, patched the security hole. But while they were in there, they had access to every aspect of Microsoft 365, which if you use the entire suite for your business or your company or your NGO or your campaign, is everything.
Yeah.
It's your advertising plans, it's the schematics for your products, it's the ingredients to your secret recipe, it's it is your internal diet, it's everything, right? And so think of that breach of Office 365 and how scary that would be for your company if a competitor company got a security backdoor to Office 365 in terms of your company, what they could do in terms of beating you in the market, just on a corporate espionage level. Then think about that in terms of a country that doesn't want you to exist at all. And the scariest thing about the Russian hacks is they don't just take stuff out. The Russian hackers put stuff in. Their goal a lot of times is take somebody's. I had a friend play a joke on me with an email years ago, before I recognized, it taught me what metadata was really quickly. But I wrote them an email, and the response was, "Oh my God, why would you say such a thing?" And I went, what did I say or whatever? And I went back and looked at my email, and it had the initial part that I'd written, but then a whole if I ever find you, I'm going to kill you. And I'm the one who keyed your car. It was just it was obviously comedic in that regard, but it was gnarly how easy it was for them to just go back, change the text, change the color of the text to make it look like the other part of the text, so it wasn't just the reply part of it, because you can change any aspect of a return document in an email, right? And it's a minor thing. Now, anybody who looks at the metadata of those things would be able to see that the person changed when and if they had changed the color of the text and they had typed that in, when that text had been added. All that stuff is in there. You can also manipulate the metadata if you want to go in there and spoon that out. Take some extra work. But if you're willing to put the work in, it's not hard to pull off a fake email to someone, right? Well, the Russians have really focused on that, because their goal is not, and was not necessarily, to help Trump win genuinely. They didn't like the guy. They didn't think this is the man that will run America in a way that will make him the best buddy, so that America and Russia can work together to cooperate on nuclear deproliferation and to save the environment together. What they wanted was a chaos agent to come in and wreck people's attitude towards democracy, so it would make it easier for Vladimir Putin to pass a law that makes him the president of Russia till 2036. That's what it was for. People you want to make people to have democracy fatigue. There are too many moving parts. Freedom is a problem. I mean, the Chinese use the unrest in the United States to great effect. They really do. When they show video of America, it is almost all people burning down targets because of police shootings, and they go and the message is, aren't you lucky that you don't have a choice when we shoot somebody?
Right.
Aren't you glad there's nobody even gets to question what we do? And if you try, you're dead too. The Russians operate the exact same way. They put down these kind of things. And the idea, the Alexei Navalny protests that have happened in the streets have been a very uncomfortable thing for Russia, because they haven't gotten violent and given them the ability to push back. That they don't give them the excuse to open fire on these crowds. That the Russians have to protest in such a narrow way that there cannot be unrest lest the entire group be put down harshly. And by the way, Donald Trump spent a lot of time while he was in office praising that kind of stuff. Said, I will tell you about, Vladimir Putin. He's a leader. You can't argue with he's a leader. Well, that's what he's talking about.
Very strongly.
They don't have gay pride marches. He didn't want them. You can't have them. That's a leader.
Yeah. From
Donald Trump's standpoint. We'll be back right after this. It's time for the news. The Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, will continue with your calls as well. 773-763-9278. Russia, Russia, Russia. Orange man bad. Orange man bad. Danger, Will Robinson. Danger, Will. Orange man bad. There we go. Hi, chat room. Hello. Neither does Iran. Yes, that's true. There was another one. So this is the article I sent you on Russian government hackers are behind a broad espionage campaign that compromised U.S. agencies, including Treasury and Commerce. That's the That's the solar winds hack. That's major. Now, here's what I think. And this is just me logically thinking. That while Trump and his cronies wanted to have no coordinated attack pushing back against what Russia was doing, while they were sort of protecting Russia in this terms, the people who are working in the CIA and the NSA and the DIA and all that kind of stuff, they're not, they're or the DNI office, they're not going to sit back and let this happen just because the president is cool with it. They're going to do all sorts of gnarly stuff to push back within whatever their purview is. And they have a lot of, breadth, just like, FBI agents in the field have a lot of, room to question a suspect, even if the boss somehow wanted to let them go. Even in the J. Edgar Hoover era, a lot of bad guys got put away that maybe Hoover would have wanted to turn a blind eye to because the law is clear. And as long as you make a paper trail, I met them this, I had a warrant for this, I asked them this, and you fill out your paperwork, there's really nothing they can do to stop you. So I personally believe that once Treasury, Commerce, and the other agencies that were attacked in the SolarWinds attack, and this is my own personal feeling about it, once they knew this was happening, they immediately buttressed they packed the hole, as it were, with fake information. That it is very easy. We have like it's like in a Tom and Jerry cartoon when they paint a door on a wall, right? Mm-hmm. In that, they think they're running through a door, and in the joke of it, of course, the mouse runs right through the painting of the door, and somehow it works, and then the cat tries to follow and bashes his head in. Well, in the case of SolarWinds hack, once they were aware of it, they start coordinating with intelligence services all over the world and said, hey guys, they're in there. And if we just, if we pounce on them, they're going to know, right away. And they're going to, they're going to absorb, they're going to take everything they have and they're going to know it's real and they're going to use it and all this stuff. So what we need to do is start feeding them BS as much as possible. So you guys need to create little trails, little breadcrumbs digitally that draw the hackers, because they are human beings, into places where they're like, oh my God, this is easier to get into, and it's got great stuff in it. And they send them into that thing, and then they cut off, and then they shut the other doors while these guys are hacking around in a fake, thing. And then they take that fake information back. Then they have to weigh the real information they got against the fake information that they got, and don't know which is true. That's how you fix a hack. Just so you know. If anybody wants to think about that stuff. Of course that's how you handle it. Police have been doing undercover operations, for years. Normal police departments do this kind of stuff. We're going to bust this guy's warehouse full of drugs. He's this close to finding out who you are. So you're going to tell him about the bust. And he's going to move his stuff, and then he's going to see a bunch of cops storm in there, and you're going to save him $5 million, and all of a sudden the suspicion goes away, and now he doesn't know who to believe, and now he's suspicious of the guy who told you that guy was an informant. That's the trick. That's how it works. It works on a baseline level. It works at every level because you're dealing with humans. But in terms of the SolarWinds hack, the proportion, what our sanctions and the like are smart, fairly simple, and let me see if I can find this, by the way. Let me see. Russia sanctions. I'll get these. I had it open and then it closed. It had an ad on it, and I clicked the close button, and then Okay, that's the White House's one. Yeah, so you can't, no one can invest in Russian bonds and still be in good with the U.S. Treasury, for example. That's a huge thing. They build their roads and bridges with bond initiatives just like everybody else. They also use them for money laundering, though. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for joining. Don't forget, if you're on Twitch, to subscribe and spread the love. If you have a Twitch channel, one of the things you can do, thank you, is host the show. You can, there's usually a little button down there if you have your account up and running. You can host my show on your channel. It just increases the number of places people can stumble upon it. It's a lovely kind of thing. If you know anybody on Twitch and you're a regular Twitch watcher, and you know somebody who's in a time scale that's either before my show during the week or after, you know, and you let them know I'm glad to raid them if they're cool and they want to raid back.
Mega worldwide.
I've had people
Thanks,
walk
Cosmic
out
Rose.
of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at HalSparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn pus-faced little pimpstick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So, Carlene is saying how Democrats are not direct. Fauci should have told Jordan it was because of no mask or vaccine people, or the borders from Trump sending people to Mexico. I agree. I mean, he's not a Democrat though. Fauci is in many ways he is a bureaucrat. He works in the government, but he's supposed to be nonpartisan. So if he attacks, while he's talking to Jim Jordan, other than on a personal level with "you're ranting at me again," if he goes into "it's the anti-vaxxers that are killing people," then that lights a fire, and it pours gasoline on that anti-vaxxer fire. And what you want to do, as far as dealing with that message, as much as it might be frustrating, is over time you have to just recognize how absurd it is, how anti-science and anti-public health and anti-life it is in a lot of ways. And you just have to let that sit. You don't have the option to yell at people. That's for people like me. That's what our role is. We're the ones, we get to be the Dr. Fauci's anger translator, as it were. So the president signed an executive order this week that included some really obvious things, like dismissing some obvious spies from the country that have been working in the, as the assistant agricultural attaché to Siberia. I am the biggest corn producer on the iceberg that we have. We towed into land for fresh drinking water. We now can grow herbs and spices. They've been punting those folks, and some of them have 30 days to get out. Others had to leave by Thursday night. A couple of them were told to get packing and be out of the country in 24 hours. Others have 30 days to kind of pack up their families and everybody else and beat it. The Treasury also, and this is kind of the Deep Reads version of it, issued a directive that prohibits U.S. financial institutions, banks, Goldman Sachs, and investment firms, hedge funds, it's a lot of people, from participation at all in the primary market for ruble or non-ruble denominated bonds issued after June 14, 2021 by the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, the National Wealth Fund of the Russian Federation, or the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation, and lending ruble or non-ruble denominated funds to the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, the National Wealth Fund of the Russian Federation, or the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation. This directive provides authority for the U.S. government to expand sovereign debt sanctions on Russia as appropriate. They can't even find alternate ways through the U.S. economy to funnel money to themselves to pay off their debts or deal with them at all in terms of bond issues. That in of itself sounds, it's all right. That's okay. But where's the James Bond moment? When's he gonna shoot somebody when's somebody gonna spray something in somebody's face and then jump out the window with a suitcase full of cash, carrying, just using the blinds cord, and then take it off, straighten his tie, and jump in a boat that has missiles on it. This is, unfortunately for the fun part of life, this is way more effective and is way more infuriating to Russia and the oligarchs that run it than shooting one of their agents, which they really couldn't give a crap about. And John, did you see the Q doc? Have you watched the one?
I've seen some highlights.
One of the things that really stands out in it is just how deep Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene were in the Q world. They show up in that. She did multiple posts. She was, Marjorie Taylor Greene was an early adopter of it, whereas Boebert seemed kind of like, I don't know, I saw something and maybe that's it. Marjorie Taylor Greene was looking. She wanted to be a baker in the people that like read the Q posts and then they interpret them for everybody and then they disseminate them. She wanted to be in that chain of command before she ran for office. That's what she was doing on Facebook. And so most of the posts you see where she's talking about Q-related stuff, she's being a baker. She's going, this happened, and these are linked, and this is why. But she's reading them without any criticism whatsoever to start with. She's like, I just heard this. This is amazing, which is one of the dumbest ways you can approach anything you read on the internet from someone that you don't know personally. If there's any way better on a social media level to walk into a rake, it is effectively to go, I saw this on the internet. This is, in a bulletin board group. This was on Reddit. Can you believe this? It's a manifesto, I guess. It's really interesting, And Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert got a lot of press this week because they were part of this. They did two things. One is they were the lone 2 votes against a bone marrow transplant bill that came out. It was, 418 to 2. Everybody but them voted for it. Even Paul Gosar, the other guy who started the Anglo-Saxon America First White Supremacy Caucus, the Whitey Caucus. Should we just call it the Cracker Caucus? Isn't that really the Cracker Caucus? Let's just call them the Cracker Caucus. Because the Freedom Caucasians, because they don't have any black members, I've often called them that. But the Cracker Caucus is very specific. But both Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene were the lone 2 votes against this, and it took them almost 48 hours to explain their vote, why they were the 2 that did it. Now, it could have been that they believed more people were going to vote against this thing. And that they just being, with the reading comprehension weaknesses that they obviously have, that they looked at this stuff and thought, oh God, this is terrible. This is obviously part of the adrenochrome pedivore crowd stuff. This is just supplying bone marrow to the vampires that live under the Capitol, right? That kind of stuff. Obviously, they could clearly have, have said something, believed that and gone, well, a lot of the folks around me, all the Trump supporters are going to vote against it. We'll be in lockstep against this. And then it turned out when they pushed the button, it turned out later they were the only 2. And then all of a sudden they're having to explain why the 2 of them, who apparently were gaggling about this, going, oh my God, I wouldn't vote for that, would you? And then they both ended up voting against it, were caught off guard by the fact they were the only 2. That's entirely possible. The Rand Pauls of the world, the Bernie Sanders of the world, when they're the only ones who vote against something, they know. They're aware of the caucus. They're aware of the votes. They're aware of what's being whipped. They've spoken to their whips several times, so they know which way votes are going to go anyways. These guys, I doubt they even care. So they voted against this, and their reasoning, Marjorie Taylor Greene's the only one who's given, that I've seen anyways, an actual answer as to why. And it was because there was nothing implicitly in the bill that prevents the selling of fetal spinal tissue, or fetal bone marrow. Well, for the record, there's nothing in the transportation bill that directly keeps the government from being able to transport fetal bone marrow, either. Any of it, because it's not included isn't because that's what it allows for it to happen, because that's what they want. It simply has nothing to do with this. Why indeed would it? Where in this is that valuable? This is literally just to help people donate bone marrow and get matched with people who need it. And people who need bone marrow getting donors that match with them. Like it's supposed to ease that process and provide funding to make that, more available. It's stunning that this is, but again, this links directly to the QAnon stuff. This links directly to their belief systems. They absolutely believe that there is this underground, deep state, pedivore, adrenochrome psycho group of people that are drinking baby spine juice, and they really think this, and they are combing through bills, and by combing through, I mean looking at the titles and going, ew, bone marrow, no way, and they're projecting that belief system onto bills presented to them that are very run-of-the-mill. Now, the lucky part is that there are very few of them. But then all of a sudden, they decide to come out with this America First caucus. Now, all jokes about the word caucus aside, and the fact that it has George Washington on it, and I'm not quite sure, other than he was the first American president under our current Constitution. We obviously had 9 presidents before that, 9 presiding officers, a president, preside, get it? So Peyton Randolph was actually the first president of what would later become the United States. George Washington was the first president under the current Constitution that we ratified, just so you know. So Peyton Randolph, here's to you, buddy. So the Margaret Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, Lauren Boebert, they've been distributing materials calling for a common respect for uniquely Anglo-Saxon political traditions, which I don't know. I'd love to know what they consider those to be. Uniquely Anglo-Saxon. If they exist, knock yourself out, man. Every culture and every society that has some sort of like like Middle Eastern algebra. You know what I mean? Like the existence of early algebra from the Middle East, that's a unique contribution of Middle Eastern mathematicians to the world of mathematics that benefit us all, and that's pretty unique, and we appreciate those kind of things, and we all absorb those, and the whole world benefits because of unique cultures being able to contribute, elements of their culture to the greater zeitgeist, right? But they don't seem to list those, and return to an architectural style that, quote, befits the progeny of European architecture, which I assume they mean Greco-Roman architecture, which, as a Mason, I end up having to give a lecture on every couple of months. And so I don't know, other than the fact that it passed through Europe from Greco-Roman movements, that they think that, like, basically they want everything to look like a bank, is what they're saying. They don't want modern architecture. The Native American Museum in Washington, D.C. stands out like a sore thumb. They don't like it. They want all the buildings to kind of have a uniform architecture. It's very weird. Now, obviously, you want stuff to fit together. It's like a skyline. If you have a big weird building sticking out in the skyline, like something ugly, like what kind of thing? Like Trump Tower, for example. You can kind of ruin a skyline if it doesn't kind of, the designs don't match. So you want some sort of level of like, well, I mean, it should fit in. But, having a Frank Lloyd Wright style building is not an affront to American culture. It is a natural expression of American culture, and he was a white dude. You would think they wouldn't mind, but I guess not. Excellent, Chris, as am I. So, all right, so this was the literature which they were passing out. Under immigration, they have America is a nation with a border and a culture, strengthened by a common respect for uniquely Anglo-Saxon political traditions. Well, obviously, parts of our Constitution come from the Iroquois Nations Treaty, so no. They also have linkages with indeed many, Uran and sub-European agreements that came and went, that failed, and that, had great parts to them but didn't succeed. So the uniquely absorbing certain parts of it. And look, there's nothing wrong with the Anglo-Saxon tradition of governance. There isn't. But the uniquely part is kind of where they go, we are a Judeo-Christian nation, therefore we are a Christian nation by de facto because there aren't enough Jews here to make the argument for the other half. That's effectively the kind of arguments these guys make. History has shown that societal trust and political unity are threatened when foreign citizens are imported en masse into a country, particularly without institutional support for assimilation and an expansive welfare state to bail them out should they fail to contribute positively to the country. I don't know where the history part of that is at all. Yeah. That's, what are you talking about? Invading armies? They're kind of alluding to that. They're talking about invading armies squatting outside your cities. This is the, circling Jericho and blowing horns. I think I blew past the break, didn't I? Or did I? Did I miss that?
Yeah, you blew past it.
Yes, I did. We got to take a break. Sorry about that. I did blow right past it. I was getting all caught up in this. We'll be back with more of the Cracker Caucus's initial launch documents right after this. They have an election fraud section.
Oh, yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. That's the stuff.
You will pay a terrible price.
Sound.
Yeah, right. For this you will pay a terrible price. Love you. Hi.
You talking about the bone marrow stuff?
Yes.
Be a match. That's what I do. That's one part of it.
Mm-hmm.
To be a bone marrow donor.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's sort of thing helping everyone if they're able to.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
To be a bone marrow.
Back in 20.
The bill passed.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. I will.
I think it's only up to a certain age. You have to pay to do it after a certain age.
Right.
But so.
Let me see.
That's my suggestion. Putting it out there. I'm part of the match.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Hi. So during the break, my girlfriend lovingly reminded me that she's part of Be the Match, which is a bone marrow matching group. That's they have a website called bethematch.org, and you can sign up and see if you are a match for helping people if you want to donate bone marrow. And cellular therapy. There's all kinds of ways to do it. They can now grow it based on your cells and that kind of stuff. So it's there's a lot of possibilities there. So bethematch.org if you want to check that out. Yeah, thanks, babe. Good things with good people actually doing good stuff. So by the way, in the sanity, the Republicans do have a sanity caucus right now. I think there's one person in it, Adam Kinzinger. And he said when the
from
the
DeKalb,
news,
so crazy.
Right. When the news came out that they were forming this, he tweeted, "I believe anyone that joins this caucus should have their committees stripped, and the Republican conference should expel them from the conference participation. While we can't prevent someone from calling themselves Republican, we can loudly say they don't belong to us." That's pretty clear. That's pretty darn direct. Let's see, under the infrastructure section, they have an infrastructure section. Did you know they have an infrastructure? They do. The America
what do
First,
they think it should be?
The Cracker Caucus will work towards an infrastructure that reflects the architectural engineering and aesthetic value that befits the progeny of European architecture, whereby public infrastructure must be utilitarian as well as stunningly classically beautiful, befitting a world power and source of freedom. Okay, first of all, considering within the realm of European architecture, there's everything from, old-fashioned Greco-Roman bank-style buildings to the Louvre, and, glass pyramids. At some point, I think you'd have to recognize that basically the only hang-up to that section, the part where they would run into trouble with that just happening naturally, is the fact that their side of the aisle is always cutting funding because a bridge just needs to be functional. It doesn't need to be nice. Why are we spending tax dollars on making a bridge look nice? It is amazing, and I guess we shouldn't be surprised at the amount of the Soviet canoodling that drove the Republicans right into Russian hands. Is that there's an overlapping, almost, for all the wailing about communism and socialism that they seem to throw up, there is a big concrete block. Who needs aesthetics? Why does anything have to be decent to look at? Why do we need stuff like the Golden Gate Bridge and stuff like that anymore? We just need it to get you across the river. Business is what's beautiful, not bridges, right? And so it's Republicans they're the ones currently arguing for a cut in infrastructure funding. What part you've got to, okay, in the infrastructure bill, you get a bridge funded, okay, and it's on the list. And the funding, the infrastructure bill was, at 2.25 trillion, but then the Republicans get what they want, and now it's 600 billion. That's it. What if the bridge still gets built? What do you think it looks like? Do you think it's an architectural marvel befitting a long tradition of beautiful architecture and creativity, befitting the leadership of the free world? No. It's crap. It's a girdered bridge that just does the job for the next 30 years so we can pretend, all right, next. I mean, they are the irony that the very people that are complaining about it, listen to the words. I mean, it sounds like Trump language. This is exactly, it's going to be stunning, beautiful, it's such beautiful. I mean, this is the language he uses. Public infrastructure must be utilitarian as well as stunningly classically beautiful, befitting a world power and a source of freedom. Yeah, our airports need to be nicer. O'Hare is awesome. It really is.
Yeah.
Kansas City Airport, not so much. It looks like something out of the Soviet era. And do you think what's the difference there? What's the difference there? Democratic spending on an international airport, and Republican spending on, a domestic airport that they're like, who cares? I mean, literally, the Kansas airport looks like something outside the Kremlin. It's the weirdest thing. And it's very dysfunctional. It's in 3 sections. You have to take, a bus between each section. They're not connected. There's no tram that goes between them, any of that stuff. This is what Democrats have been asking for a long time. Every time we ask for infrastructure, is that the country becomes more beautiful across the board and all these things. But all of a sudden, unless it's uniquely Anglo-Saxon, whatever the hell that means, there's no description on that. In their education section, our education has worked to actively undermine pride in America's great history and is actively hostile to the civic and cultural assimilation necessary for a strong nation. I mean, my kid says the Pledge of Allegiance, and then he learns how to read and write. And the recognition that slavery was a thing should only make you feel bad if we didn't teach about the Civil War also. We need comprehensive immigration. Because here's the thing. The problem is that they don't want slavery taught in school and how awful it is. Because if you just don't talk about it as much, you don't, prove how extraordinary abolitionists were. The more you recognize the evils of slavery, the more extraordinary the sacrifice that abolitionists made to end it are, which means the Northerners get more credit for not only winning the Civil War, but being on the right side of history. And it's much harder also to walk by that statue in downtown, Wilmington or some crap that's of a Confederate general and pretend it's not, that he was fighting for something horrible. Not just business, not just states' rights, but the subjugation of human beings. That's why. Once you have complete education, you might have a bend back and forth as you start teaching it. Wow, you don't realize we haven't actually taught the abolitionist side of the Civil War because we weren't trying to step on the toes of the Confederates down there. Now that we're teaching more about slavery, might be time for kids to learn more about the abolitionist movement of whites and blacks working together and Chinese immigrants working together to stop slavery. That's amazing and a beautiful thing. Natives participating in that. That kind of stuff is amazing. But maybe we taught less of that because we didn't want to upset the Confederates. We didn't want to upset the Daughters of Confederacy. So we start teaching the truth about slavery. We start teaching the truth about abolitionists. We start having hope and belief in our country again. The only reason we run into this America sucks thing is we're taught that somehow the Confederacy and the people that followed it afterwards are a valuable, important part of the nation that they fought to destroy. We'll be back right after this. What is Anglo-Saxon architecture? Castles and shit? Yes, castles are awesome. I am pro-castle, by the way. I'm not pro-monarchy, but I love me some castles. The only person who loves castles more than me is probably Nick Cage. Nice, Connie. Hyde Park's the best part of the South Side. The bridges, streets, airports, and railroads should all be beautiful. I agree. But that costs money. It costs, and you have to pay designers. And that's why you have National Endowment for the Arts. And that's why people who design stuff win grants. And then you can, instead of, hiring a design firm to design what the train system should look like and the art on them, you give grants to art students and people like that who can design it. And then they get national recognition because they got it, and they get paid with a grant, which is way less than hiring a multinational PR firm to design your bridges. Yep. That's what you do. And that person that designed that bridge now is a bridge designer. And now they have, not only, are they, capable of doing this, but they might, a city or a town that has discretionary funds to fix a bridge or something in their area might hire that person because they have a tradition of doing this and they built this really nice one and they won the grant for this. And then that person is now a national treasure. I should taunt you a second time. I told him we already got one. I don't think he'll be very keen. He's already got one, you see. He says they've already got one. You've already got one? Oh, yes, it's very nice, sir. Can we see it? No, you're English types. Well, what are you then? I'm French. Why else would I have this outrageous accent, you silly king? Oh my God. The fraud section.
You say fraud or broad?
The fraud. I fart in your general direction. Your father was a hamster and your mother smelt of elderberries. Now go away or I shall be forced to taunt you a second time. Fishy lavash. What? Okay. Fishy lavash. Go get the
back
cow.
in 20.
Okay, thank you. I don't need a little screen. Thank you for trying to help Skype, but I don't need another little screen of Johnny. I've got a big one. I'm looking right at it. I don't need a little
Somebody in
tiny
chat
one.
said that it looked like you were doing a news report on me.
Oh, look at this guy, huh? Am I right?
Can you believe it?
APB. All right.
I'm Dick Kay from Back on the Beat, and here is the mega worldwide radio program with Hal Sparks.
The things you guys missed during the break. When a member of the chat says, Hal, I'm very impressed by your cow impersonation. I mean, you're hitting all the beats. This is a complete show. This isn't just This is infotainment, if I do say so my damn self. The Cracker Caucus, formed by Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gozar, is also includes Lauren Boebert, who, if you don't know, is the representative from Riffle, Colorado, and as the representative of Riffle, she's very gun friendly, but there's a section of this that she obviously had a hand in drafting on election fraud. Across the country. Federal elections have been undermined by using voting machines that are readily compromised and illegally accessed, whereby results appear manipulated. Why would you break into a machine and make it appear manipulated? Wouldn't you just manipulate it? What's the point of breaking in?
I don't know. To be found out later to try to prove something?
Yeah. Well, one would argue that they break in to create the illusion of fraud, so that if the client that they support, Trump, loses, then you can say, somebody broke into these machines. Clearly, whoever won is the person behind the fraud, right? But don't get me started on the SNS, right? Voters are disenfranchised and faith in our system eroded. Mail-in voting, long recognized as subject to fraud, has become normalized. Has been long recognized as subject to fraud. No, not long recognized as subject to fraud. Minor cases. I mean, I think we have 3 people.
They're never recognized, only accused.
Yes, right. We will work towards an end to mail-in voting, implementation of national voter ID. Hey, supply everybody with a national ID, and you will have to buy. You must have his mark to buy or sell, right? MTG. And substantive investigations into mass voter fraud perpetrated during the 2020 election. Mass voter fraud, of which there is none, by the way. But let's understand this. Let's see. What happens if I look up Colorado mail-in voting? What's the system like in that? Colorado. This is the Coloradoan, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. It is a newspaper from Colorado, and she's obviously, the representative of Riffle, which is real Colorado. After 7 years of voting by mail, Colorado voters aren't taken in by the absentee ballot drama. Part of the national drama swirling around the November 3rd general election is centered on voting by mail, but that's not the case in Colorado. While some states will be sending ballots to all voters for the first time in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the potential health risks of in-person voting, all registered Colorado voters have been receiving ballots by mail since 2013. Now, when was Lauren Boebert? When did she win? When did she win this big fraudulent thing where the ubiquitous mail-in voting can't be trusted? When was that? Was that before 2013?
No,
or
I think it was kind of recent.
Along with Marjorie Taylor Greene, brand friggin' new, and and won while Donald Trump lost. Won in her state while they have a Republican governor a Democratic governor in Colorado, I believe. So this idea that somehow, she's going to be part of a group that ends mail-in voting is a joke. Her own constituents, Lauren Boebert, one of the 3 founding members of this, the idea that she is going to, quote, end mail-in voting is absurd. The group says they are trying to carry out the tradition of Donald Trump's presidency. Here's how they describe themselves. A certain intellectual boldness, oh, wow, right out of the gate, huh? Is needed amongst members of the AFC. Oh, that's the America First Caucus, the AFC.
Oh.
And I think CCP works, the Cracker Caucus perverts, because it's her. Boebert's husband showed his genitals to teenagers at a bowling alley. Marjorie Taylor Greene was knocking boots with a sex guru at her gym. and you know, and her husband apparently knew about it, and she like embarrassed him with it on purpose, you know. So I don't know what Gozar's predilections are, but they look very ice cream truck just by his face. But so I'm just gonna call the AFC the CCP for now. I don't know if somebody's already trademarked that. We'll find out. A certain intellectual boldness is needed amongst members of the AFC. It reminds me of the, you know, the People's Front of Judea. We are the AFC. Oh, I thought we were the Freedom or America caucus. No, they're over there. Splitters. All right. Sacrifice. Let's see. Follow in Trump's footsteps and potentially step on some toes and sacrifice sacred cows for the good of the American nation. Step on some toes. Like, this is so bloviating. Policy areas as far-ranging as foreign intervention, economic development, immigration, trade, tech regulation, and social policy need to be re-examined from the ground up to ensure that what remains keeps the interests of Americans at heart. Need to be re-examined from the ground up. Do we even need trade? Why are we talking to foreign countries at all? Ask the big questions. You know what I mean? That's the goal. That's where we really need to hit this stuff. Yeah. Is that nothing works, nothing is going our way, everything is terrible, everything has been terrible forever, from Reagan to, you know, Bush 1 and Bush 2, to the surplus of Clinton, to the, you know, the contract with America, everything. We need to start from scratch. I don't know what the baseline is. My guess it's somewhere before 1920. I'm gonna guess before you know, like what. And if we were in many ways, if we were to like go back and reimagine these things, I am curious. Other than we need pretty architecture, and it should look like it fits. You know, if we got these classic old buildings, they should kind of look like that, because they don't want some big weird. We don't want a big building that looks like Grimace sitting next to the Smithsonian. We're like, well, yeah, we have zoning issues around that. Here, you want to fix that? You want to fix that? Give DC statehood, dummy. Because then their zoning on buildings would apply, and there'd be uniformity in it. The problem is the vast majority of buildings in DC were built during the, you know, sort of the pro-Soviet concrete style, where utilitarian quick building was prized more than architectural beauty. So I don't know who they are complaining to, if not the Republican movement towards aesthetically boring. I mean, look at the FBI building.
It just sounds like stuff they copy and paste into their fundraising emails.
Well, it sounds like they, you know, for some reason, they, you know, they're trying to suck up to Trump, like, if only the insides of our buildings, all look at the congressional offices look like the dome areas did, instead of just these boring offices. Well, there's a reason why. They have huge turnover, and you can't be trusted. Some of you gave tours of people who came in and rubbed excrement on the wall. That's why we can't have nice things. This is why we can't have nice things, Boberts of the world. I'm going to take an early break on this next piece, and then we're going to come back with a piece of good news, since we'll try and do a bit of a happy ending this week. I mean, we've had a lot of rough news this week, not the least of which, you know, is the trials and the shootings in Minneapolis and those kind of things. And I have, you know, in many ways stayed away from covering those things because they are getting kind of wall-to-wall coverage everywhere else. And all the information that is to be had that is legitimate is being had. And I think everybody knows where we and our chat room members and folks at the station stand on these issues, and that racial equity is one of the main reasons why people voted for Joe Biden and why they wanted this ticket, the Biden-Harris ticket, to win, and why we want the policies that they are espousing to be implemented to make America truly the emblem of freedom that it can be for every American. And then because of that, extrapolate that view of freedom and that view of human worth out on the rest of the world, so that the Vladimir Putins of the world and the Xi Jinping's and the Kim Jong-uns have a really hard time arguing with their people and about the value of our society and the worth of every human being. And these racially homogenous countries don't get to wag their finger at us and tell us that we can't get along, because by and large, we do. And the goal should always be to move more in that direction. And that's what makes me a proud Democrat. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT820.com, AM 820. Wow. Okay, just gathering something up real quick.
Okay.
Oh my God. What happened to Jim? Irma Gersh. Jim Caviezel is in a Q conspiracy theorist conference. He joined it virtually and promoted this QAnon blood harvesting conspiracy theory.
Oh boy. Blood harvesting, huh?
The dark virality of a Hollywood blood harvesting conspiracy. I don't doubt that this is where the bone marrow bill, why those two voted against it. This is an article from when? This is July of 2020 was in this article. I don't.
Back in 20.
Right Thanks.
Yeah.
Your prayers. This film is when Tim Ballard came down to Bogota and we had about finished 2/3 of it. I said, "Why did you pick me?" And he said, "Well, they didn't want you. They wanted someone else." But I said, "Well, I got to tell you, I did this movie Monte Cristo and The Passion."
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending. Yay!
So I spoke earlier about this report that there have been approximately 5,800 breakthrough COVID-19 infections, and that about 5% of that 5,800 group required hospitalization. Sorry, 7% required hospitalization, and that 74 of those people had passed away. All of them were over the age of 60, and the majority of them, interestingly enough, of the breakthrough infections were female. Still an incredibly minor number. It's over 60, but we're talking really over 60 in a lot of these cases. And the argument is that they still got COVID because of, a variant, and when in the process they had gotten their first or second shot in these cases. There's a lot of details that are kind of left out in this. And related to that, I wanted to, the CDC released a statement about this particular detail, because we were literally talking about 0.0001% of vaccinated people, all of them in a certain age group, all of them with pre-existing conditions and other elements that could have caused their death, but that they technically tested positive and they died. So they said to date, health experts with the CDC said they're currently monitoring reported cases for, quote, clustering by patient demographics, geographic location, time since vaccination, vaccine type or lot number, and SARS-CoV-2 lineage, which variant they have, whether they had just gotten their shot and their body hadn't had a chance to build to immunity yet, which would indicate that it wasn't the fact that the vaccine wasn't efficacious, it was just that they were exposed before it got a chance to build up their immunity in their system. To date, according to them, no unexpected patterns have been identified in case demographics or vaccine characteristics, meaning that in these deaths, these 74 deaths and the 7% hospitalizations of these minor groups of these 5,800 that actually got the disease after the fact, none of those people were 3 weeks past their second dose, for example. None of those people had, and many of them were within the first window of their first dose, is basically what they're saying. And so it's incredibly reassuring that if you follow your doctor's advice and you get both vaccinations, or in the case, Johnson & Johnson's on pause. So currently, it's Pfizer and Moderna are the two they're the big games in town. Also, again, both ones that, while they took pre-orders from Operation Fartsteed, which I'm sorry, I didn't have my sound effect up. I'm usually better than that.
Captain's log. Where that might be.
Yeah, that during Operation Fartsteed,
Captain's log.
That they, while AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson worked pretty hand in glove with the task force that was run by Mike Pence, in the case of Pfizer and Moderna, they did not. They worked on their own. They said, well, yeah, we'll sell them to you. If you want to give us the money up front, we know pretty much how much the doses are going to cost and how much it's going to cost us to create this thing, and we think we're onto something. If you want to pre-buy them, knock yourself out. And that's what we did. The U.S. pre-bought doses of almost everything. They had a chance to buy more of the Johnson & Johnson, but did not early on. Again, the pause for Johnson & Johnson is going to be another week as they work out whether or not the blood clot issue is something they can mitigate or something they have to watch, or that they can warn. If you are a person of this age, if you're male or female and you have this condition or you take these kinds of medications, they're going through those cases. There are very few of them, but they're going through those and going, okay, this is the through line. They're playing detective currently, and they're trying to find out what is the linkage, if any, they can find that causes these blood clots. In the same way that we lost some folks to strokes, ischemic strokes during the last year that may or may not have tested positive for COVID, as far as, they died and then nobody tested them because they had just died. One of the members of Sam Cedars, the Majority Report, passed away quick, suddenly from a stroke, from a blood clot. And that very well could have been his body's reaction to having fought off COVID, but having one of these lurking issues. Yeah. And so they may find out that, yes, some of the folks that are getting Johnson & Johnson, actually, they got exposed, but they didn't have enough antibodies to peg the needle in terms of getting the test, and let us know that that we didn't know officially that they had COVID. It didn't show up on the test. And therefore, the vaccination had very little to do with that. It was just where we were sending them. There were groups of people since they're sending Johnson & Johnson to areas of the country where refrigeration is a problem, where medical facilities are not as readily available, that the people that may be getting those things also may have other health issues that are specific to region, to rural diseases, as it were. And so that has to be a factor going in. Overall, though, the Pfizer and Moderna efficacy is extraordinary on measure with every other disease so far. Pfizer has come out and said that you may need another booster in 6 months because they're checking people's resilience from the tests they did last year. And then that may be enough to get you where your body goes there. So 2 separated by about 3 weeks, and then another one 6 months later as a booster. But that's a maybe. That's not definite. That is something that they are presenting as a possibility. But the point is that this is working. Over the course of the country, while cases have gone up and spiked in areas like Michigan and in Detroit literally ran out of ICU beds because of COVID. Mm-hmm. Largely you can tell which groups and where are getting sick from this. You can tell which groups and where are skewing the numbers. And it is indeed anti-maskers and anti-vaxxers. Both those groups of people are creating a situation where they are they're causing the spread to grow, and they are themselves becoming sick. And repeated stories keep showing up about this. You know, the people who didn't believe in it, and then their last words were "I was wrong" before they were hooked up to a ventilator. I mean, it's it's the poetry of our time that we're hearing a lot of these. Now, on our way out the door, by the way, like I said, I will be in Florida next week when I'm doing the live show, and I won't be streaming on Monday because it's a travel day. When I arrive in Florida, having been fully vaccinated, I still, before I go to work on Tuesday with the cast, I and every cast member and every crew member will have been tested for COVID within 24 hours of the first day of work. Not 3 days, because Florida, you can mingle for 3 days in Florida, and your test effectively is worthless. It's meaningless.
I bet.
So Tuesday morning, this is the new abnormal currently, is that I'm going to fly in Monday, like I said, having been fully vaccinated, wearing my mask and all that stuff. Tuesday morning, I get up early, I go over, and they do have free testing. Free rapid testing. Every rapid test I've had to get for work in the last few months, when I've gotten them because I had to go do a live show, they gave me 3 days, which always seems so weird. It has to be, at least the last 3 days. It would seem like you would want it the same day, but I've had to pay out of pocket, $130 to $150 for each of these to get them as close to the actual thing as possible. Otherwise, scheduling them a week out seems absurd. But now we are at the point where you can get tested for free in a lot of places and quickly. And then we are moving into, and I think this is one of the most extraordinary things, is that we've got news from the CDC and the NIH that a possible AIDS vaccine, an HIV vaccine, may be on the horizon because of all the advances made in mRNA vaccines because of COVID. Because of the bum rush to do this, they learned so much so quickly and applied so much known science to this that they're like, oh, okay, now we know how we could, using AI, they are now able to craft molecules that are laser focused on strains of disease and don't, like in the terms of, like chemotherapy, which is a poison that you hope kills the cancer before it kills you, that starts laser focusing, the efficacy of both vaccines and treatments on the actual, on the atomic level, on the cellular level of these diseases that we encounter. And that will usher in an age of health and protection that I don't know if we have the ability to grasp at this point. That they're obviously going to be playing whack-a-mole with strains, with both this and other diseases, as they will do, as you do with any contagion, as they do with SARS and MERS, in regular cycle, as swine flu and bird flu remind us every few years that they, but because they have a baseline vaccine developed, they're able to modify it slightly and stop the spread as quickly as possible. Well, this will make it even more efficacious and more specific. So this idea that it might hurt your cells or hurt your genes or mess with your own body or your blood, all that stuff, because of how narrow focus this is actually getting, is, I think, one of the most beautiful things to look forward to over the next 5 to 10 years. We are, after living through this year of lockdown and fear and concern for our relatives and our friends and ourselves, and not knowing if if our grandkids will see their grandparents ever again, and what if they pass away alone, and all the horror stories we've heard about people passing in that situation. We are very close to a circumstance where if a disease like this takes somebody, or is in the process of taking somebody, people who are related to them can get inoculated against it fairly quickly and visit that person in the hospital freely, even if that
can be nice,
even without any danger to themselves. And that our medical facility, and I have to give, there was a period when we were clapping. We're at the end of the show, but and I want to thank everybody for their super chats today and their support, and the patrons, and Johnny Million for being there, and everybody in Chicago. But we're at the point where we can say we were all applauding the EMTs and our first responders during the beginning of this, and I think that there became a normalization of, well, that's just life right now. These people are exhausted. They've been through hell. And over the next year, you're going to need to take one of them to a comedy show, buy them a drink. If you know a nurse or a doctor or an emergency room tech or a ventilation expert or an anesthesiologist, and you run across them, pay for their appetizer, buy them a drink, send them balloons, do something. Because they're seeing the horizon finally for the first time, where the rest of us have not had this daily exposure to this virus the way they have. Thanks, guys, so much. We'll see you next time. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. See you next week. Yeah, I don't know why my the
great show, guys. I'll see you next week.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
It. Yeah, I never did get to the names because I'm a goofball. Because I started talking and then off we go.
You started talking.
You kids that die, you man thing. So let's see. We'll just bring this down a little bit. And one. Is that right? Hold on. Fixing something while I'm sitting here. Why not?
You got a big rest of your day coming up?
I do. I mean, I go to Florida, so Summer and I are having. It's gonna be nice. We're having date night tonight. We're gonna go have Din Tai Fung. We're gonna go have dumplings, and I'm not cutting my hair. No, I am not. This is. And by the way, I think I talked to the. Look. I mean, seriously, look at this. This is well beyond the kind of like. You can't really tell when I'm wearing a dark gray shirt or a black shirt, but like it's at the shoulders. It's full on Jesus length now. I don't have to shrug to get it to touch my shoulders anymore. But I think I'm going to have a white stripe for Malvolio.
That's fun.
Spray because he's an older snooty. He's a jerk. He's really a jerk. This is my opportunity to play Blackadder on some level.
Yay.
Yeah. I will. Thank you, Shell, for mentioning that. Nurse Eric. Okay. Any reported other than 6 women. Also, I heard statistically women are more likely to suffer blood clots from birth control pills. Yes, that's generally true. That's something women have had to deal with because of the hormone basis of birth control. Guys, can I just say, can we just work on a reversible vasectomy? Seriously. Can we just... there's some variations of it, that exist now, but like a really solid one where it's 100%. I mean, and then what you do is it becomes like a moment of manhood when you're 15 and your parents take you for your, my mom. About the time my mom started giving me condoms to make sure I was being safe, you go to the doctor, little anesthesiology, and you wake up not able to make babies until you decide you want to.
Yeah.
Like
it kind of seemed like the men could be involved in that.
Yeah, well, and it's an easier one because it's not a hormonal shift. You would still produce testosterone and all that kind of stuff. You just wouldn't. The semen wouldn't reach the the vas deferens and you would the sperm wouldn't actually be in the semen, and therefore you wouldn't impregnate anybody. Still be able to perform sexually, you'd be able to do all that stuff, but you wouldn't make a baby. And that, that would be the shift we're looking for. Then women don't have to worry about the hormonal aspects of stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've seen it rock people's worlds.
Yeah. And by the way, somebody said, will 12th Night be taped? Yes, it will, and it will be live streamed, and I will post that. Yes, firing blanks for the win. There you go. A male birth control pill is would be arguably the same kind of essence, where you can't stop the production of sperm without changing the testosterone base, which messes with people's hormones. And like I said, when we were talking about what trans people have to go through to transition, that's not a game. That is that's when somebody is that their trans experience is. Where people are like, they're just men being women, or whatever. Like, no, if you're willing to lower the testosterone and raise the estrogen in your body when your genes are firing otherwise, you're setting yourself up for some long-term health negatives weighed against you being able to live the life you want. In the same way that people, who have prosthetics, have to fight getting sores on their limbs and all that kind of stuff. That's a part of life. If somebody's missing a leg, they've got all kinds of things they have to do to keep their stump healthy. I have several friends who are missing limbs, and there's a lot they have to go through to deal with it. We have, it's, and that's the price. But what's the alternative is not being able to walk, to the max amount that you're available. That's the same kind of thing. So when you talk about, hormonal based, women's birth control and men's birth control, you're messing with those kind of elements of the body, and there are all these ancillary problems that come from that. That's why the concern. And so that's why I think a physical shift for men, which we know works, if you clip the vas deferens and you tie it off and you're done.
Yeah.
My mom worked for a urologist for 12 years. They did vases on Fridays. I know it's outpatient surgery. I knew more about vasectomies than any other 10-year-old at my elementary school. So, and it was because my mom did that all the time. We spoke freely in the house and what it was and what it worked. But it wasn't reversible at the time. And it's largely not now. There's now a version where it's got a little click switch. You can literally have it, and you can literally find it and go from being able to make babies to not make babies.
Well, that's just madness.
Yeah, that's crazy. I would rather just go have a surgery and then go have another surgery, like just dental surgery on your balls. But anyways, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna go. Summer and I are gonna have a spend. Can you do a DIY vasectomy? No. Do not attempt.
Thank you.
And I will see you guys later on. Love you, Johnny Million. Everybody.
Love you too. Be safe.
Thank you. Like and subscribe, thumbs up, all that kind of stuff. Johnny Million's thing is Johnny Million 1. I have to fix. I don't know why both of these things. Oh, and there he goes. Bye. There he goes. He just pops out. Dun, da, da, da. There we go. I'll go back to me. Hi. Hey. So I'm going to sign off, and Summer and I are going to go have a date night tonight because I'm leaving for 3 weeks. And much love to you all, and thank you guys for your support and our new patrons. We got 2 new patrons today. Thank you guys so much for that. We're almost back up to where normal stuff will be going out to patrons again, as far as patches and all that kind of stuff. We got them. We got scripts. All those kind of things. That's finally gonna start happening. I know I keep saying that, but it's always been like I'm always, because of sexy liberalness, I'm doing it by myself. I don't have anybody helping me, so it's hard to get it all done and out, and it's a big rigmarole. And there's still some missing details as far as like clothing sizes. So if you're a patron, please in the information thing on Patreon, please list your home address if you're expected to get something mailed, because some people haven't, and your shirt size is very crucial, because some people are trying to send merch stuff out to them, and I don't know what size to send them, and I don't want to either be rude or dismissive, or also send you something that's for a kid or or a brother-in-law that sleeps on your couch, size-wise. So please do that, and we'll try and take care of that as fast as possible. And I will see you guys soon. Wish me luck in the streaming. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Will be the next stream, and it will be earlier than usual because my rehearsals will be 7 p.m. Pacific time. So I'm going to, for the first week, I'm going to stream earlier. The second week, I may stream after rehearsals because it's later. It depends. I don't know how long rehearsals are going to go. If they're a solid 2 hours and I can plan it out, it might be okay to bump the show. But if it turns out like once we get there at 7 o'clock, we just work until everybody passes out, that would mean there would be no show. So I'm going to start doing it earlier, get a feel for rehearsals, and then I might move it to after if we get in and out, and then it'll be closer to the original time. I'd be like Thursday hours most of the time. So I will let you guys know sort of daily. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll make sure that I post to make sure that everybody knows that or whatever. And if I'm a little jelly-headed, at some point, it's because this is my script. It'll be a couple of days where I'm working on the bigger monologues, where I might just be like, I have so many words in my head right now, I cannot think. So, thank you guys so much for the break of legs. I appreciate it. And if anybody's in the Tallahassee area or within driving distance, I look forward to seeing you guys at the actual show. And if you're patrons, let me know, and I will do my damnedest to get you a comp on whatever night you're coming. So, feel free to let me know by whatever means you want to reach out, and we'll create a working list from that. And I should find out this week how many comps I have per show, but it should be fine, I would guess, from the volume of patrons we have at different levels and all that kind of stuff. It should work. I'm guessing. I don't think all of you are coming on one night, and even if you did, I think they'd be like, oh my gosh, look at all these people. It is, it's Shakespeare Festival after all. But so anyways, take care of yourselves, guys, and I will see you guys later. Okay, bye.